Hello, friends, and welcome to Weekly Witness, Texas Impact's weekly podcast designed to help mainstream Texans of faith understand the legislative process and help you engage with public policy in the great state of Texas. My name is Scott Atnip, your host and Texas Impact's Director of Public Witness, and today we're excited to launch our fourth season of Weekly Witness with a conversation with Texas Impact's esteemed Executive Director, B. Moorhead. We thought this would be a timely conversation to kick off the new season as we move out of the usually sleepy summer months and into a consequential fall election season, which will lead into the 89th Texas legislative session in January. Y'all, if you're listening to this podcast, I probably don't have to tell you that the next few months will have enormous policy implications for our local communities, our friends and neighbors, the state of Texas, the United States, and the world. And it's paramount the Texans of faith speak to the moment we're in and organize, rally, motivate, cajole, and beg our friends and congregations to take this moment seriously. It has been incredible seeing so many of you engaging with the enthusiasm this moment requires. I look forward to seeing many of you at our North Texas Faith Votes event August 18th, and I know many of you are organizing your own events and civic engagement efforts. Texans of faith are leading, and it is so inspiring to see. If you want to find out how you can get involved, check out texasimpact.org, and for sure, check out the Texas Faith Votes page for tools and resources. Or shoot me an email at scott@texasimpact.org. Y'all, we're happy to help, but you're the ones with the local connections, so we look forward to supporting your efforts and cheering you on. And I know that B will be a big cheerleader of your efforts, so let's go ahead and wrap up the intro. I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation with B. Moorhead. Joining us for today's conversation to kick off Season 4 of Weekly Witness, we have with us Texas Impact's Executive Director, B. Moorhead. Hey, B.
Hey, Scott.
How have you been? I haven't seen you in a hot minute. We've all been busy with summer things.
Everybody's been traveling. It's been crazy. But, I mean, I'm good. I haven't been traveling. I've been hanging out in Austin doing work. But Season 4, can you imagine it? When we first did the first episode of Weekly Witness, did you ever imagine we'd still be doing it all this time later?
When we were recording on my cell phone in the Capitol with a handful of people. Now, we've come a long way since the early days.
I would say so. I am so proud of you. I'm so proud of us.
It's been a journey, and super excited that the listeners have continued to support the program and shared it with their friends. It's been a fun ride, but also a fun ride is what we've done over the summer and what we plan on doing over the course of the next few months. Texas Impact is coming out of a very busy summer. We've had lots of travel, lots of things going on, but we have new staff, we have new programs. There's a ton of energy. What stands out most to you about Texas Impact Summer?
What stands out to me most about Texas Impact Summer is two things. One is the extraordinary amount of professional travel that our staff have gotten to do that has just been so exciting. We've had staff going, as listeners know, we've had staff in Ghana and U.S. Virgin Islands. Closer to home, though, we've got folks in, Bobby's going to Ghost Ranch soon, and we've had people all over the state, and Fabi right now is in Guadalajara, actually. And in all these cases, they sound like really fun places to go on vacation, but our staff members have been there doing deep professional work, being on the radio in the Virgin Islands, participating in a conference on theology in Ghana. Fabi is learning about root causes of migration with immigration advocates from the United States and other countries. So it's just been such an extraordinarily rich summer for our staff.
Yeah, in addition to that, the team members, Texas Impact team members have also been doing some great work in partnership, obviously, with the staff. So talk some about all of the different projects that have taken place this summer that folks should be excited about.
Oh, gosh. That's the other thing I was going to say is we've been able, so some years there's been a special legislative session, and it has been a challenge to dig deep on the issues that we need to and also keep up with the demands of a legislative session. This year, thankfully, we didn't have that. So we've been able to really stick to our own agenda and do the deep work we needed to do. And our teams have been remarkable. Our public school defenders have been working on the Bible forward curriculum that TEA has put out and are doing some amazing work on that. We've got the gun violence prevention team, which is just tearing it up all over the state. They've got, thousands of these T-shirts, and they have been partnering with local government on events. The reproductive policy team has been doing some amazingly sophisticated work, in my view, doing training facilitators to hold these small group discussions. I'm kind of struggling for the right term. They're not focus groups, but we are partnering with some academic researchers to use the qualitative information we get from those small group discussions to learn some things about how Texans are feeling about Texas' abortion ban and reproductive policy. So the climate action team is working on methane emission research and comments. They're all doing really hard work, and that's not even including the North Texas Faith Votes and Houston Faith Votes who are actively mobilizing hundreds of congregations around nonpartisan civic engagement and get out the vote. So I guess I'm sorry to be so blathery about it, but there is just so much work happening. And as a small staff, we couldn't possibly do all that stuff by ourselves. But it is amazing the way that our teams and active members have just kind of come on and taken on substantive work. I just can't say enough about how enthusiastic I am about our members.
I'll add to that. I had a chance to hang out at the Houston Faith Votes convening in Houston a couple of weeks ago, and they were so energized. That was so much fun, and I'm looking forward to being in Dallas with the North Texas people in a couple of weeks. So that's where a lot of the attention will be these days, is on election season that's coming up. But we are in the middle of a really busy part of the biennial calendar in terms of the legislative calendar. And so talk to us about where we are in that biennial calendar right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So, previously we've talked about the interim charges from the House and Senate leadership. And we're now at the part of the legislative process where the committees that are studying those charges are holding public hearings and kind of moving in the direction of writing reports. And, we're spoiler for folks, we're making a little video series to help people participate more effectively in the legislative process. And so Davey and Gracie and I were over in the Capitol last week shooting some video. And in the middle of the summer, the Capitol was buzzing. There were people in the offices. The grill was, grilling. And the activity level shows that people are moving in the direction of legislative session is coming. So that's really important for our members, because we've had multiple team members on different teams saying, well, I'm real interested in being involved in the election, and I kind of probably can't do everything, so I guess I can kind of step back on the legislative stuff, huh? And what we've said is you do need to be involved in the election. That's definitely important, but you need to kind of keep your split screen active, because those legislative hearings are going on. The budget hearings are getting ready to start happening. And this is the key time for a lot of things for constituents to have the kind of conversations with legislators that you just can't have during the session. If you want to actually sit down and have coffee with your elected officials, now is a time when theoretically you could do that. January is the time when you could not, theoretically or otherwise.
And so what's it look like if people are doing it well? Is it conversations to coffee? Is it popping into the district office? What's your advice there?
I heard a really good description of an experience that one of our members had recently. Members of the Social Justice Committee from one of our member congregations set up a meeting with their state representative. Somebody on the team called the representative's office and scheduled a meeting. They went to the district office and they had an agenda of things they wanted to talk about. And the representative had an agenda of things they wanted to talk about with the faith community. And as their constituents and as people of faith, turned out in the course of the conversation, they had not realized they all were part of the same denomination. So that's fun. And also, in hearing what the representative had to say, our members came back and reported back to us, wow, the representative has some really serious things on their heart as well. And we didn't get through everything that was on our agenda, but we feel like we got really important insight into this person who potentially had seemed like an adversary, right? Or somebody, at least a competitor on a lot of issues. And they kind of stepped away from that meeting saying, I gotta take a second look here at my relationship with this person. They need me. That was really significant.
I love that, and those connections are certainly great. But I think that the headline coming up over the course of the next few months is the election season that is coming up. And I'm assuming that there's nobody who's missed that's taking place over the course of the next few months. I think early voting kicks off in just over 2 months. I know folks would love to hear your thoughts on the current political climate. It seems like we're living through a few months that will be entire college courses for future generations. So where are we? What are your thoughts at the current moment?
I have so many thoughts in the current moment. One of them is I think people are energized, Republicans and Democrats. And I want to stress that. I mean, Texas Impact has a bipartisan, multi-partisan membership. And right this minute, the Democratic ticket is what's getting all the airtime, and that's as it probably should be because it's making news. But I think what is energizing people across the spectrum is the feeling that maybe everybody can be a little bit nicer to each other. The return of the idea of civility. That's really important because the flip side of civility and everybody being decent to each other is political violence. And that's something that even though right this minute we're all feeling hopeful and energized and, newly interested in exploring how we can work together in a bipartisan way. And I want to say something about that in a second, but just to finish my thought, the flip side is all the people who are maintaining their focus as they need to, as they should to, because it's their job, on what if things do get sour later in the fall. And in Texas, we are part of the Common Ground USA project to identify and de-escalate political violence in our state. We have colleagues who are working on that project in other states. But there's, from the messages people are getting online about you should double check your voter registration, and that's true, you should. And it doesn't mean that you have to get all cynical about the whole process, but also you should go ahead and check just to kind of check it off your list. And people who are kind of speculating and opining on whether they think there will be a smooth transition of power, it is not up to most of us to determine that at the highest level. But we definitely can steer the conversation with the rhetoric that we use in our local communications. Those things are real. That idea that just because it feels good right now doesn't mean that it couldn't go bad. The job is to make sure it keeps feeling good, that we keep being positive. So I'm going to tell you the personal thing I did to remind myself of that. And that is, last night, I pulled out former First Lady Laura Bush's cowboy cookie recipe, which when people maybe don't even remember this, but when during the 2000 election, Bush Gore, Laura Bush and Tipper Gore, as had been a tradition for years and decades before that, had a bake-off. They each submitted a cookie recipe, and Tipper Gore submitted a ginger snap recipe. And I think most people felt like, well, if you're going to do chocolate chips versus ginger snaps, it's not really going to be a contest like from the jump. But the cowboy cookie recipe was insanely popular, and I pulled it back out and made it last night. And I tell you what, it is just as good now as it was 25 years ago. So
love that. Love that. You mentioned earlier that there are hundreds of congregations who are participating in this Texas Faith Votes initiative. And you've also talked about the importance of maintaining civility and respect and all of those things. What do you hope congregations specifically and listeners will do over the course of the next few months as we move into this, what will inevitably be a contentious election season?
I hope, first of all, that they will not equate staying quiet with staying civil.
Right.
It is not, it is concerning, the thread that I've seen on social media that is, will my husband know who I voted for in the presidential election? The idea that that it's a secret, that you have to be ashamed, that you have to watch your step, that can't be the way we do this. Now, I can't speak as to whether in anybody's individual marriage it caused a problem if they didn't vote for the same person. But I do know that trying to stay real quiet and not let people know that you're an actor in the public square is not serving you or anybody else. So I hope people will step forward in faith, step forward with courage, and say, I am real interested in what's going on in the world, and I'm participating. I hope that people in congregations do that. I hope that clergy do that. I hope they don't endorse candidates from the pulpit, because as we know, that is against the law, but or at least it's against the rules. But I think there's so much that the faith community can do to normalize the idea that we don't all have to agree about the candidates to agree that we should have a process that works for the good of the community. So that I want everybody engaged and active. We're doing events. We have an event on August 18th in Dallas, the North Texas Faith Votes event, and I hope people that are up there will attend that event. We also have Texas Faith Votes resources on our website, and everybody can access those. I think it's really important to not just think you know what you're doing, but read the RTFM, as we used to say, read the manual, read up on our resources and the ones from our colleague organizations. And, if you've got extra time, if you had a choice between watching America's Funniest Home Videos or being on a webinar with the election protection folks or the GOTV folks, America's Funniest Home Videos will be on YouTube later. So just do the timely thing for a little bit.
Yeah, and I think, you've mentioned the Texas Faith Votes resources. I think as we talk with congregations throughout the state, I think there are a lot of people who assume that folks in their congregation vote, right? And then, if you actually dig in, we find out that there are a lot of people in a lot of our congregations who aren't paying attention or who aren't making the time to go vote. So I do think it is important that we talk about the importance of civic engagement. We believe democracy works best when the entirety or as close to the entirety of the community votes as possible. So faith leaders really do have a big role to play over the course of the next few months, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And as a public policy organization, Texas Impact is already turning attention to the Texas legislature, which will convene in January. Talk to our listeners about that process and those preparations. I know the board retreat is coming up soon. So what do those preparations look like?
Yeah, so our board makes a biennial legislative agenda. So that means it's good for the legislative session and then all the special sessions that follow that first session. So our board will have its biennial legislative retreat in September. Already we've done some surveys of our members to see what issues they are the most interested in. Spoiler, education is probably the top of the list for everybody. We're also doing some deep dives back into our prior legislative agendas, seeing how they've turned out, what the outcomes have been, and we're looking again at our denominational legislative and policy priorities. Some of our denominations have been through some pretty big changes in the past few years. They've done things like revising their social principles, for example.
I've heard rumors of that work.
Yeah. So we want to make sure that we are as current as possible in our understanding of what our faith traditions say about the issues. We're then also having some conversations with fellow advocates in different organizations and lawmakers, and just trying to get a sense of what everybody's feeling are the things coming down the pike. And here's what I want to say. You heard it here first. People have spent the past however long, months and months and 2 years, saying the 2025 session is going to be terrible. It's going to be a lot of bad words associated with the way people have described it. It's just going to be, we're not going to be able to get anything done. And I am putting a flag in the ground right now that I don't think that's true. I think there will be a lot of bad stuff that happens. Name me a session when somebody has not felt like there was a lot of bad stuff that happened. But I think there are possibilities for good stuff to happen too, particularly in the area of just common sense, incremental policies that benefit families and especially families with children in Texas. I want to tell you a little story, Scott. So
I'd love to hear a story.
When I was in high school, I went to summer camp. I went to summer camp for drama because, as you know, my background is in theater, something no one would ever guess of me. And I took a class in lighting design, and the big finish of that class was that the teacher made us get up at midnight and go sit on a roof and watch the sun come up until like 7 o'clock the next morning. And it was brutal. I mean, sitting there all night in the dark, except that about the time that you thought it's never going to change, that, well, wait a minute, maybe it's changing a little bit. And what our teacher said was, if you wait till 5 or even 4 in the morning to go watch the sunrise, you already missed it because the world is turning constantly. And the sun is starting to become visible way before you consciously perceive it. What I want to say to you, my friend, is after all this time, I don't think it's 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning right now, but I'm pretty sure it's past midnight. And the world's going to keep turning and the sun's going to come up. And you got to keep watching every minute or you'll miss the minute when the first rays come.
Well, if people of faith can't have faith and be optimistic, who can? So, I think there are some opportunities, but there are going to be a lot more opportunities if people do the work in advance.
Absolutely,
right? If people engage,
absolutely.
Throughout this fall, engage moving in. So what does that look like? How should folks be preparing for this legislative session?
One, they should know. I feel like we shouldn't have to always say this, but of course we do. They should know who represents them. They should know the names of their legislators and the number of the district that they're in. And they should know what level of government they're talking about. I don't want to hear anybody saying that their legislator is Senator Cruz. That is not the case. So know who your legislators are. Get in touch with them and their offices. Even if all you do is send them a postcard and say, hey, just wanted to let you know I'm a constituent. I'll be back. Something. Call them up and ask. So it's always hard. Like, it's like asking somebody on a date or whatever. How do you ask somebody to prom? Like, you need those prompt questions, right? Here's a good prompt question. I'm just calling to find out if staff are in the office all week. I'm calling to find out, what do you prefer? Do you prefer that we make an appointment, or do you like people to just drop in? Do you plan to start being in the office regularly after the legislative session? So start by getting some boundaries there on what can you expect. Say, I'm interested in coming to talk to you about issues that are of concern to me. Do you have a preferred model for that? They might say, I'd be happy to go to coffee with you, or they might say, talk to my scheduler. Could be anything. But one way or the other, like, don't wait till the last minute and then be like the person who's at the airport with all their luggage and then realizes that they needed to check what time the flight was and whether they're allowed to carry that thing on the plane, right? Start now figuring out all your boundaries. Then write yourself a good list. Like a lot of people, I went for an annual physical earlier this year. People should do that. And when I went, also in keeping with best practices, I made a list of all the things I wanted to bring up. Because when you're in a meeting with somebody that it took you time and energy to get, and you anticipate that they are going to have limited time for you, you will do better, and they will be happy to see that you have a list of things that you want to cover and that you're able to do it in an orderly way. So it's not that different from any other kind of meeting that you would have with someone that you respect, that you don't know that well, but that you'd like to get to know better.
And for sure, you need to ask when you can bring Laura Bush's cowboy cookies over, right?
Ask if they have a gluten allergy. If they do, I believe there's a gluten-free version of those cookies available. Sure.
All right. Well, I appreciate all of the optimism, all of the ideas, all of the thoughts on what listeners should be doing. B, you have any closing thoughts for today?
I am so proud of our staff and our membership and the faith communities of Texas. Keep it up, y'all. Everybody is doing such good work, and it's going to pay off.
All right. B. Moorhead, thank you so much for the time and for the work you do every day on behalf of A Better Texas. We'll look forward to seeing you again after we have the board, the legislative agenda, so we can talk through that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Scott.
I hope you enjoyed this week's conversation with B, and I hope you're motivated and inspired to get to work this fall during the election season, and that your enthusiasm will carry into the Texas legislative session. Our faith traditions call us to engage and work for justice, to care for our neighbors and communities. Now is the moment to act. If not now, then when? I hope you'll consider what you can do this week to pursue the work of justice. As always, Texas Impact has tools for you. I especially hope everyone is using the Texas Faith Votes resources. You can find those and so much more at texasimpact.org. While you're there, I hope you'll take a moment to sign up to be a member of Texas Impact. Your membership supports this podcast and all of the work to engage Texans of faith to advocate for a more just and equitable Texas. If you have questions about any of it, please reach out. You can always catch me at scott@texasimpact.org. And with that, I think it's time to close out this episode. So remember, the world needs Texans of faith active and engaged. So let's get to work.
Weekly Witness is hosted by Scott Atnett, engineered and produced by David Fasalo. Our executive producer is B. Moorhead. The opinions expressed on Weekly Witness are those of Texas Impact and our guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views of our sponsors. Weekly Witness is a product of Texas Impact, people of faith working for justice. Visit us online at texasimpact.org.